There's a growing trend within the tabletop roleplay community that says specifying one's alignment is a waste of time, with the idea being that morality is not black and white, but more of a shade of gray. This is not an opinion that I happen to share, nor do I believe the concept of morality to be that of an opinion, since as Plato put it, opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. Hello everyone, welcome to Lord Pog Gaming. I'm your humble host, Lord Pog. I've been away for a while, as my full-time job has been keeping me pretty busy. Here lately, I've really only had time to upload my D&D sessions, a campaign I've been blessed to be running for 9 years with my group. I've affectionately dubbed them old school gamers. Something else I've been uploading a lot of is a series on my channel called Free Games That Deserve Attention, where I shine a spotlight on indie developers and try to help them get the recognition they deserve. Both Season 2 of my D&D campaign and Free Games That Deserve Attention can be found with their own playlists on my channel. And while you're here, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Sign my guest book to help with my algorithm. My guest book being my comment section, of course. All of this really helps the channel and would mean the world to me if you did. Thank you for joining me as I begin with another series with its own playlist on my channel called Psychology in Gaming, as I attempt to explain the difference between legality and morality. As stated before, Plato's view on opinion was not a very flattering one, but perhaps that's become a blanket thought on his view of opinion as a whole, since the irony of such a statement could be viewed as an opinion in of itself, and not a statement as a whole. Let me explain. Plato was a student under the philosopher Socrates. Bill and Ted, it gets me every time.
No way!
Socrates, and was the teacher of Aristotle. He himself was an Athenian philosopher, being attributed to having influenced most of, if not all, Western philosophy. Dissecting Plato's thoughts on what it is to have an opinion, and what we as a modern society have termed what an opinion is, can better help illustrate the difference between legality and morality. Further on down this video, of course.
Hold your horses.
At first glance, what Plato is saying doesn't sound very flattering in regards to opinion. Yet if one takes a step back and views this from an objective standpoint, a much deeper meaning begins to unfold. No one person can say that they've never had an opinion before, since as Plato stated, opinion is just a medium, meaning that the difference between knowledge or fact and ignorance or lack of facts is having an opinion on to form of the subject matter that is at hand. The opposite of knowledge is ignorance, which must mean if one cannot state something as fact, they are more likely basing their opinion on thought on said opinion. So opinion rests closer to ignorance than knowledge, which makes sense considering everything known to be fact first came from a place of ignorance, or lacking of facts. Now, you golden wonders out there might be wondering, why is Pog focusing on what an opinion is, and why is his rhetoric so cryptic?
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Well, because what we, dare I say, mostly in the Western world, have come to believe about opinion has become skewed. When Nietzsche said, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist," this was based upon the idea of subjective truth. But if truth is subjective, then can a person be a liar? Or better yet, can such a thing as accountability for one's own actions or thought be upheld in the eyes of one's own peers? If all one does is approach things from the subjective and never objective, then when does knowledge ever become truth and the veil of ignorance lift? If knowledge is the ideal goal of any topic or belief, then not every opinion is valid. Does every opinion need to be validated is a better question. Much like a game of any sort, everyone starts at a place of ignorance. They go through a tutorial of a sort, begin developing their opinion about what's to come, but by the end, they reach a conclusion that they should ideally afford them the proper knowledge of the game. Where opinion remains in such a scenario as, say, a game, is whether or not the game was any good, worth the time played, and external theories involving aspects about the game, like fan theories about parts of the story or plot that does not present itself directly to you or as a whole. Such opinions are relatively harmless, of course, like debate over who has better fries, McDonald's or Burger King. Both can be easily tried and compared, leaving room for personal preferences or opinion, but the answer is neither, by the way. Wendy's fries dipped in one of their Frosties. This is the best kinds of fries.
Come on now, you expect me to believe that?
Now that we've eliminated opinion as a viable line of reasoning, but have turned it into more of a pathway to truth and knowledge, let's do what this channel is meant for and talk about gaming, and use gaming as the prime example for the difference between legality and morality. Mainly by talking about the alignment system in D&D and how it's still an important factor of D&D's core system. For the uninitiated, D&D stands for Dungeons & Dragons, a tabletop role-playing game created by Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, with its first publication in 1974 by TSR, and has since been ruined by Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, which is why I only play 3.5 edition D&D. But I digress, since that's a subject for an entirely different video. One of the core mechanics of D&D is alignment, which range from good, neutral, or evil. These three alignments then become more nuanced, as each of them have three sub-alignments attached to them: lawful, true, and chaotic. So for example, a human paladin, a paladin being a holy warrior of their chosen god, think a Knights Templar, for example.
Wake up and get yourself to church,
A human paladin will probably be good as their base alignment, then choose to be lawful as their sub-alignment, making them lawful good. A tiefling warlock, which a tiefling is a half-fiend or half-devil, don't care what retcons have happened in 5th edition, again, I play real D&D, a tiefling warlock will probably be evil or neutral at the very least, and either go lawful evil, lawful neutral, or true neutral. And you might be asking yourself, why wouldn't they be good?
To be fair,
Well, they very well could be good. As a DM, aka Dungeon Master, I am not against the idea of a good aligned tiefling or warlock. For those of you who don't know, a Dungeon Master is a person who runs the D&D sessions. Think a glorified referee, not a god. Any DM who sees themselves as a god of the game needs to check their ego. Again, I digress. Yet another topic for a different video. Anyway, I'm not against a good aligned tiefling, since they can't help they are half-devil. Many a good story has been told where the hero comes from hellish stock, like Hellboy or Devil May Cry. A warlock, which is basically a magic user who doesn't get their spells from study like a wizard, and their magic isn't inherent like a sorcerer, could very well be good aligned also. But where a warlock gets their magical ability is basically from making a pact with a powerful outsider.
I just can't imagine who. Could it be Satan?
A powerful outsider isn't a god, but more like a being who's obtained enough power that they can afford to siphon some of it into a willing host. Sort of like what happens in old folklore when mortal men make deals with incubi. More often than not, a powerful outsider is a devil, demon, or selfish fae. Again, that doesn't mean that anyone playing a warlock can't choose to be good aligned. Harry Dresden of the Dresden Files series experiences a conundrum such as a D&D warlock, and he is chaotic good, I would say. If any of you Golden Wonders out there have never read or heard of the Dresden Files book series, I implore you to check them out. But not the show. The show was crap, sadly. Not on the same level of crap as Rings of Power. At least the Dresden Files show tried to capture the spirit of the books. Rings of Power deserves nothing less than a firing squad.
What did he say?
In regards to human paladins, though, and tiefling warlocks, I simply use those two as prime examples of alignment. They are the easiest to use, but humans can just as easily be evil, and a blackguard is basically an evil paladin.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Point being, while yes, neither are black and white in their examples, there is a rising opinion that alignment should be done away with as a result of the lacking in alignment's black and white process. I've listened to many RPG horror stories here on YouTube about some player playing a lawful good paladin, then basically playing them like a naive nuisance who constantly gets their party into life and death situations as a result of tattletaling on their party for every infraction of the law the party might make in order to reach their ultimate goal of good. This is called being a problem player, aka a troll, and in no way is a proper representation of what an actual lawful good alignment mentality is, or should be played as. Captain America, Steve Rogers, is a good example of a lawful good aligned character done right. In video games, Link, the hero of Time Link, is another good example of lawful good. Lawful good does require a form of adherence to a code of ethics, attempting to do what is good for good's sake. But this does not mean that a lawful good character is required to narc on their own party just because their party doesn't prescribe to the same standards of morality. A thief, aka rogue, who is neutral or true neutral, traveling with a lawful good paladin because they are both striving to accomplish the ultimate goal of good and justice, doesn't need to create constant conflict if the rogue decides that they need to pickpocket a noble for whatever reason and or bluff or lie their way out of a sticky situation. This should not instantly cause the lawful good paladin to alert the town guard of the rogue's bending of the law.
You liar!
However, to some degree, the lawful good paladin should not just be turning a blind eye either. Perhaps the rogue doesn't tell the paladin that they had to steal because they know the paladin wouldn't approve. If the rogue has to lie to get the paladin and themselves out of trouble, the paladin lets it slide for the moment, then proceeds to lecture the rogue later about the virtues of finding another way above lying. I'm not saying that the rogue is obligated to agree with the paladin's virtues.
Consequences, consequences, as long as I'm rich.
And especially in the early stages when the paladin and rogue are first getting to know each other. There should be a level of conflict and mistrust between them until both can come to see that both of them, rogue and paladin, are in the end out to accomplish the same thing, which is ultimately good. Both players should also keep in mind that D&D is a game and not meant to be taken personally. That what they are doing is called character growth, not meant to spill over into their real life and relation to each other. Again, if one takes in-game criticism personally IRL, in real life that is, they are trying to use D&D to erase the idea of accountability. Eliminating aspects of alignment and turning everything morally gray and subjective takes away the spirit of the game. The rogue isn't always going to be right, nor is the paladin in a sense, but in different ways. If the rogue steals from a noble because said noble has a key they need, and then the paladin browbeats them for it, then the paladin is being overbearing, and no virtue is achieved for enforcing it. However, if the rogue simply steals just to have extra gold, and the paladin has a talk with the rogue about stealing for stealing's sake is wrong, only to learn that the rogue stole so they could eat, the paladin now has a chance to express the virtues of hard work and honest gain. It's understandable if the rogue is not receptive at first, but if the paladin is gentle but firm in conviction, this begins to create a dynamic story and plot line between them. Once again, all is possible by setting the clear-cut boundaries of alignment. Neither are going to be 100% in the right all the time, while neither will always be wrong. The issue that has risen within the D&D community is by eliminating this dynamic of alignment. All morality then becomes subjective and gray. The paladin never thinks to question the rogue's actions because they're both the good guys and the paladin shouldn't be judgmental. However, the rogue will never think to butt heads with how staunch the paladin is because the paladin has never tried to rein them in from some of their more underhanded behaviors. One could argue that all these dynamic growths that are organic to alignment can still be achieved without alignment, to which I agree, but that's at the expense of inherent morality. Freud called inherent morality the superego, which he claimed is the final persona developed by the individual, with the ego and ID being the first two, followed then by the superego, with the ego being the inherent representation of ultimate want, and the id being that one uses to deny the ego when said wants are selfish and detrimental. The superego becomes the moral compass meant to keep the ego and id morally aligned. Freud claims that the superego only comes into being based solely on what an individual learns from the societal structure and what that tells them how morality works. To an extent, this is correct, yet this undermines what the id does. The ego is unbridled want, with the id being the aspect of human nature that helps the ego achieve these wants within reason. Should those wants be overtly selfish or detrimental, the id will also step in to deny the ego and its wants. It then stems to reason that these three aspects could be redefined as desire, morality, and legality. Setting aside desire, which is something everyone has, which is normal and a part of being alive, what's left is morality and legality, with one being inherent and the other societal. Very quickly, the id, or morality, as it's been now termed, learns the difference between right and wrong, so that it might control the natural force that is the ego, i.e. desire. Freud was correct when stating that desire is the first thing we as beings develop, since if one only simply observes an infant, they'll come to the conclusion that all they are is pure desire. Morality's job then becomes to keep desire in check, with society stepping in later, enforcing their idea of legality or social morality. While morality and legality often work hand in hand, with legality often reflecting morality with its laws, this is not a flawless system, as legality can and will circumvent morality with its laws. Much like art imitates life, legality should imitate morality. It's when art tries to get life to imitate it, as we've seen too much of here lately in our beloved entertainment. R.I.P. Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Dragon Age, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Tomb Raider, and many, many more.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now?
When legality tries to force morality to reflect it, desire runs rampant. Often enough, the misconception is that the superego falls by the wayside. Yet in a subjective moral society, the legality of the superego lends itself towards the ego's desire over the id's inherent morality. Meaning that when life is forced to imitate art, and morality is forced to adhere to legality, morality is ignored as legality now imitates desire.
This is a bummer, man. That's a bummer.
Bringing it back to D&D, a prime example of this is the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. Now, I've gone into these themes of the ego, id, and superego before, using the Dark Elf trilogy briefly in my mouthwashing video. It's in my psychology and gaming playlist on the channel, and I'd be honored if you watched it after this.
Do it. Do it.
Also, if you've made it this far, and I haven't run you off, thank you from my very heart and soul. Please like, share, and subscribe. Sign my guest book down in the comments. It truly means everything to me. Back to the Dark Elf trilogy. They are a series of books revolving around a dark elf named Dritz du Urden. They take place within the D&D setting of the Forgotten Realms, and focuses mainly in the Underdark setting within the Forgotten Realms. Dritz is a dark elf, also known as a drow, a subterranean race of elf. Drow society in the Underdark is treacherous, with subterfuge and deceit being praised within its societal structures. Dritz is the main character of these books, and from early on, it's established that despite his culture deeming such nefarious behaviors morally legal, he internally knows something is wrong. This is the point being made here, that just because a society can create laws that justify certain actions and behaviors, this does not in turn always make them morally just. In the Dark Elf trilogy, Dritz ends up becoming exiled from his homeland because of his lack of willingness to adhere to such abominable standards. This is because of, as C.S. Lewis called it, the laws of human nature. These laws of human nature break things down into almost a spiritual coding that are ingrained in our genetic makeup. One might look at these laws as an emotional response to situations where the moral and immoral became a fork in the road. If one cannot choose a path, they become stuck in a type of spiritual liminal space, standing forever at the fork, taking neither path and taking no stand on the matter in which has created the fork in said road. Meaning if one does not take a stand, then they will eventually stand for nothing. Yet what happens when one witnesses many favoring a path over the other? When every sign and/or direction points towards a path making it more favorable. As far as Dritz is concerned, this was the case. Everything told him to take the road traveled by all his kin. Yet inside, he knew what was right, and so he takes the road less traveled. Much in the way of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, where at first glance, it's not so easy to decide which road is best. It's only by making a choice that whether the road one chooses is truly the best road, while having the wisdom in knowing if the road one is on, it can always be diverted. Regardless of society or circumstance, Dritz decides to take the road less traveled, and is better for it. So what this is all leading to, and the question that really sits on everybody's mind is, does D&D really need a chart or a formal statement of some sort indicating alignment? No, not necessarily. The argument presented to you Golden Wonders out there isn't about that, but rather the idea of alignment. While working on this video, I was chatting with one of them old school gamers, which is a term of endearment I've given my D&D group. He plays Duch in our campaign, and I was telling him my thoughts on alignment, to which he said that a lot of TTRPGs out there, like D&D, don't have alignment charts at all. That most of the time, morality presents itself within the situations that the players find themselves in. That as long as the DM or GM manages to describe the situation in such a way, they can then draw on an emotional response, and morality should shine through with the players. I don't entirely disagree with this. As stated before, the laws of human nature argues that morality is, after all, ingrained in humanity. Only issue I can find in any of this is what if the DM/GM isn't a natural storyteller? There's so much more that goes into running a TTRPG besides proper knowledge of the rules, game mechanics, and above 6th grade mathematical aptitude. There also has to be storytelling. All of these things go into being a good DM/GM. I promise that while them old school gamers would vouch that I have an interesting campaign and I have done a good job at telling a compelling enough story, none of them would say that I'm a master at the mechanics of D&D.
This is fine.
I'm mid at best in that category. So if the person running the session isn't exactly good at drawing upon their party's emotions, the conflict then arises in alignment, because TTRPGs are, at the end of the day, just a game. One of the issues that D&D has is that consequences for one's actions are not actually quantifiable, making them untangible. Making the idea of a chart for alignment is not needed, but formal introductory is important. This is the true gray area of alignment and morality, since everyone playing needs to know where each other stands on that particular subject. Not only that, but also willing to stick to their guns on the matter, as sticking to your guns is an old Southernism. Does that mean everyone playing needs to be the same alignment? Certainly not. It might actually hurt the campaign and/or story if everyone played lawful good characters, especially if one of the players is only doing so because everyone else is. No, having a character who might want to ultimately do right, yet bends the rules to do so, or doesn't consider who he or she hurts, besides their party, to achieve what's best for said party, again is an interesting dynamic. If one of the other party members is lawful good, should the lawful good player never speak up, however, because they don't want to be chastised for upholding their moral code? For them, they are wrong. For he who knows what is right and still does the opposite, for him it is sin. And I know the word sin can be polarizing for some, yet the definition of sin means to miss the mark. If one is not playing their character correctly, they have missed the mark. It doesn't excuse the expression, "it's what my character would do" statement so often used by those who simply play only to be disruptive. Playing a character in the correct manner, for lack of a better explanation, simply means staying true to the character, while creating interesting dynamics with the chosen alignment, whether it be taking the road less traveled or creating a kinship between players who may not always see eye to eye. One final example I can give on this matter are two vastly different stories featured on the YouTube channel All Things D&D, which is a fantastic channel that I highly recommend. It's Storytime D&D, and it sets itself apart from the RPG Horror Stories channels. by telling stories of entire campaigns. The 2 stories in question can be found on the channel in the playlist Narrated D&D Stories at story number 1, which is titled Garg and the Moon Slicer, Just What Is Good, and number 168, A Gentleman Lizard Folk's Epic Role-Playing Makes the Party Question Their Morals. Both stories are fantastic, and were real campaigns. I don't want to spoil them, so I won't say too much, but what I will say is both tackle the ideas of morality and what it means to do what is right. Yet both stories take vastly different approaches on the subject of good versus evil, and the road we take to achieve either or. And with that, I want to thank y'all who has stuck it out to the end of this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. YouTube doesn't seem to like me very much, so sign my guest book to help gain the channel some traction, and ring my bell for notifications. I know I have been gone for a while, and I'm really sorry about that. Work has been crazy, and I'm trying to get back into this. So, I'm back now. Let's see if I can continue this momentum. And before I go, I want to address that I know I sound really opinionated on this particular topic. My only argument to that is, when considering morality, one should always consider this. What is right doesn't always align with what a person personally wants or desires. It doesn't always go with the flow, and more often than not, swims upstream. It's not selfish. It considers what's best for others, even when those it considers aren't doing what's best for themselves. It can be punishing or cause punishment for following it no matter what. In short, being good or doing what is right can be, and most of the time, the hardest choice an individual has to make. I'll leave y'all with this poem, The Road Not Taken, by Robert Frost. I love y'all, and y'all come back now. Stay golden. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, had warned them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
I plan to go all night up to the Golden Gate, and if they ask around, tell them my Bronco's gone. You want my